thought I would do a day in the life of a booktuber. This is what my reading day looks like from when I get up in the morning till when I go to bed. So, yeah, this could be fun. So the first bit of my day is spent sitting down with Orlando Fige's Natasha's Dance. I'm planning to read this through the month of June and then go into another Fige's book for July, which is A People's Tragedy. My TBR for Russian history and Soviet history is far too big now, and I'm just not getting to them, so I'm going to TBR it, and I'm going to commit to a book a month and go through my Russian TBR because I'm absolutely loving it. So I plan this in a Notion page which has a formula that works out. All I need to do is put in the last day of the month and it tells me how many pages I need to read a day. So to get through this, 20 pages a day, and then honestly it's this time in the morning, so it's usually between 8 and 9. I sit with this and a cup of tea, and it's when my brain is just waking up, but somehow it's at its most receptive. So reading history at this time in the morning, it's just the perfect start to the day. Right, once I've read my 20 pages of Natasha's Dance, I head over to my desk, and this is where I will pick up my copy of War and Peace. So this is the Tony Briggs translation, Anthony Briggs, with an introduction by Orlando Fige's. Look at that. So this is part of a read-along that I discovered through my YouTube channel from a comment by Elfie Austin on my book haul video that I did for this book. And Elfie mentioned that she was reading it with Simon Heisel as part of a read-along. And he's got an incredible Substack where he's going through this book for the second year in a row, reading one chapter a day, which is very achievable. The chapters are short. Now, I didn't join until March, which means catch up. So I'm reading generally 3 chapters a day, which again is not that much. It's usually about 6 or 7, maybe up to 10 pages. And that should allow me to catch up by, if I keep going, end of June, beginning of July. But if I read 2 chapters a day, if that's all I can fit in, that's okay. I'll still catch up by the end of the summer. So I'm reading this in tandem with this copy here, which is the copy that I read back when I was a student, and I wrote my dissertation on War and Peace, comparing it with the 1968 movie adaptation by Sergei Bondarchuk. So this is a different translation. This is Louise and Aylmer Maud. And what I like to do is have that open beside. So I've got them both. And then I can have a look at the different translations, and I can also take note of what I underlined back in the day when I was doing my dissertation at the age of 26 years ago. And it's very interesting to see what the younger version of me underlined for my dissertation. So there we go, War and Peace. So after War and Peace, I'll get myself some coffee, have some breakfast, come through and then take a look at some social media. We'll get on the Discord, watch a BookTube video or 2, and then it's time for Crime and Punishment. So back in March, I think it would have been, I started a read-along with this on, what's it called, the Storygraph. I bought the cloth-bound classic version of this as a gift in December to give to my daughter's boyfriend as a Christmas present. And because it was going to be a couple of weeks before I would be passing it over to my daughter to give to him, I thought, why don't I read it? And so I did. And I was like, what an incredible novel. Wow. And so I decided, for some reason, to start a read-along on the Storygraph in March, because this copy had just come out. This is a recent translation by Roger Cockrell. And I wanted to read it again, just to see what this translation was like. And so I started the read-along, reading one chapter a week, which would have taken us up to the end of the year. And we'll finish right as the bells are chiming into the next year. But the Storygraph forums are quite limited in what you can post. You can't post images or any kind of rich media, and it's not a web page, it's just a discussion thread, which is fine. But when I saw Simon Heisel's Substack for War and Peace, I was like, oh ho ho, I wonder if I could do this for Crime and Punishment. Before I knew where I was doing it, I was setting it up. Quite a big task. I'm learning from doing it what a massive job it is, and I take my hat off to Simon, because the work that he must be putting in, because he's running not only War and Peace, he's running Wolf Hall as well, doing a similar thing. Is it Hilary Mantel, I think? So this guy is setting a very, very high bar on how to do a read-along on the internet. It's just immense. So I took inspiration from him and I built something similar on a Substack for Crime and Punishment. And because I started it 8 weeks after the original read-along, I was like, I'm going to reset this. So that's what I did. And so now, my current reading with Crime and Punishment at the moment involves going back to reading a chapter a week from the beginning, and then writing a chapter analysis to go up onto my Substack, and keeping the Storygraph one going, which is now 8 weeks ahead. So I'm reading that 8 weeks ahead chapter as well, and then writing a chapter analysis for that. So this is my last week where I'll be catching up with myself. So this will be week 7, which I've started writing. So I sit with this book and my iron on top, which holds the book open for me. Let me show you that. So this is a number 3 iron that I bought at a flea market in Belgium, in Arlon. And it's just such an ideal tool for holding my book open, so that I can sit and type, do my notes. So I love this thing. It's also a good book stand, but yeah. So that's my Crime and Punishment reading. And that's what happens every day. I'll sit and do a bit of that and do some writing. If you want to join in, of course you can. I'll put a link down below. I would love to see you. We're only at chapter 6, so there's plenty of time to catch up. One chapter a week, just as I did with War and Peace, and I'm getting there. Next book, Lord Fowl's Bane, the first of the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever. This is for a podcast that I'm recording with my friend Barge, that I was at university with back in the St Andrews days, and we became besties, and we're still in regular contact. So recording with him tonight. We're going through a chapter a week and putting it out as a podcast, which will be up on my YouTube channel as well, but it's also on the podcast apps. Now, my friend Barge has never read this. I don't even think he's read any fantasy. It's not really his thing. So it's really interesting to bring in a non-fantasy reader to follow along with one of my favourite series. So that's going to be happening tonight, so I'll have to read a chapter of this today. Chapter 17, End in Fire. Another book I'm reading is Tolstoy's What is Art? So this was recommended by Benjamin McAvoy. I looked at his Anna Karenina content and also his Crime and Punishment content, and in both instances he recommended this as supplementary reading. So I'm going through it, and this is a subject that's quite close to my heart, so I'll make a video review of this when I'm done with it, for reasons which I'll go into then, but it ties in with fantasy, and it's quite an interesting concept that I'll be discussing. So at the moment, what am I? Not even quite halfway through, but I'm going through, the chapters are now very short, so I'm trying to read one a day. And if the chapters are long, like chapter 10 looks like it's going to be, I'll maybe read 5 pages or something, just to keep it going, because I've been reading that one since April, beginning of April, I think. So yeah, I kind of stalled on it a bit. So I'm just making myself go through 5 pages or so a day. Another one I'm doing something similar with is Svetlana Alexievich, Boys in Zinc, which is a fantastic book. This author she's just incredible. She covers Soviet history in a way that's very real and raw. She talks with people, real people who were there. I mean, this particular book is about Afghanistan and the soldiers that went out there in the late 70s and the 80s. And she talks to them, and we get some horrific stories, reportage style. And this was an impulse buy when I was in Waterstones. So I'm going through this, just a chapter a day. They're very short chapters, so I'm enjoying that as a supplementary read as well. And then at night, when it's all finished and I get to sit down with a book to relax, this is where I go. I go into bed with this at night, and I'll read a chapter of The Live Ship Traders. This is the second book in the trilogy. I'm actually reading the first, but it's beside my bed, so I'm using this one as the prop. Written by Robin Hobb. This is the second trilogy in the realm of the Elderlings, which is a full 16 series book. A 16 book series of fantasy. I've only read the first 2 trilogies, and I've only read this trilogy once, which was back in 2001. Gosh, long time ago. So I don't remember much about it, other than the fact that I enjoyed it. So that's happening again. I'm enjoying it again. I'm currently about 3/4 of the way through the first one. Incredible book. These are really easy to read, really fun. The time just disappears. It's the kind of book where, you know, sometimes if I'm reading a history book in bed, I'll be tired and I'll be looking to see how many pages there are left in the chapter, and then I might be like, too many pages to go. This one, you're like, oh, it's the end of the chapter, right, what time is it? Oh, I could maybe read just a little bit more. You know, that's kind of what these are like. So they're great for travelling as well. I travel twice a week sometimes, or at least once, where I go pick my son up or take him home from school, which involves a ferry, and it involves a train, and it involves sitting around Glasgow in coffee shops and stuff. So having a book like this that's really easy to get into is ideal for that kind of situation. And then there's the writing bit. So I've already mentioned the writing that I do for my Crime and Punishment project. I've also got another Substack where I publish my journal writings, which probably sounds a bit mental. I know that. But I love to sit down and write 2 pages with a fountain pen. I do love a good fountain pen as my collection. And it's really a mental health exercise. But it's something I've been doing since I was a kid. 1986, my first journal is from, which is very cringeworthy to read. But it's a habit, a practice that really helps me with my mental health and with my sobriety. For those that don't know, I'm in recovery from alcoholism and have been now since 2005, so, you know, a wee while, and I'm still taking it a day at a time. And so what I consider this as part of my recovery. So it's like one of the steps is we continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So I get to take personal inventory in this and learn about where I went wrong, and then I can promptly admit it. So it's just a habit and an exercise, and the reason I publish it is because I want it to serve as an example for other people who are struggling a little bit, just to show that it's a really useful exercise. So, I mean, I do self-edit a little bit. I'm not going to, whenever I mention family and stuff like that, then I just won't publish it. So you'll see big gaps in the publishing, and that's why. But if I write something that I think is particularly share-worthy, then I'll put it out on my Substack, which is camscampbell.substack.com. And my Crime and Punishment one is over at camscampbellreads.substack.com. So there you go, wee day in the life. That's my reading stuff, wee bit of writing. I haven't covered the podcast editing, the video editing, and the essay writing for my Substack, etc. It's kind of full on, but you know what? I'm loving it. Thanks for watching.